Hello, everyone. My name is Nick McGilvery. I am a senior sales engineer focused on Jamf Security Suite, and I am really excited today to talk to you all about Jamf Trust. For this session, I'm going to be talking us through a brief overview of what Jamf Trust actually is, some of its capabilities with threat defense, data policy, and private access. I'm then going to be touching on how several customers we speak with often have three separate solutions for these unique capabilities. And then I'm going to be going into a section where I say how with Jamf Trust, we can actually simplify your network stack while serving all three of these unique needs. And last but not least, I'm going to then take us into the admin portal and then show you what it looks like from an end user perspective, as well as some of the vast reporting capabilities we get within our admin portal as well. So let's get to it. So Jamf Security will help you overall with two problems in the network. First off, the ability to protect organizational data wherever it lives, and secondly, the ability to enable productivity from anywhere. Now, how do we do that, you might ask? Well, today I'm going to be taking us through more or less the individual pillars of this security suite to showcase this with the introduction of Jamf Trust. Jamf Trust is broken up into three separate capabilities, starting with threat defense, then focusing on data policy, and then concluding with private access. When we talk about threat defense, I'm talking about the ability to protect remote devices and users. With threat defense, we focus both on the endpoint and in the network. Some of those endpoint related threats that we focus on are malicious apps, vulnerable OSs, jailbroken devices, and even sideloaded apps. Some of the more networking focused threats that we focusing are zero-day phishing, malicious network traffic, cryptojacking, spam, and even risky hotspots for when your users are traveling. Shifting gears and talking about data policy, this is all about the ability to provide risk-free access to the internet. The main use cases that we see with data policy are acceptable use, content filtering, and preventing bill shock. Last but not least, we have our private access pillar, which is all about secure access to business applications. This is our Zero Trust Network Access, or ZTNA product, where we make sure, first off, the user is who they say they are, and secondly, we make sure that the devices are safe and secure enough to access your business applications. Now let me dive a little bit deeper into each of these three capabilities. Like I said, threat defense is all about protecting users and their data. We do this both on the endpoint and the network. Just as a refresher, threats that we see on the endpoint are often malicious apps, jailbroken devices, sideloaded apps, and even vulnerable operating systems. Threats that we block and see most commonly in the network are zero-day or those unknown phishing attacks, malicious network traffic, cryptojacking, spam, and even man-in-the-middle attacks. Well, how do you do this, you might ask? Well, Jamf has our own machine learning AI platform called Miriam. And with Miriam, we have the ability to monitor zero-day threats, and this allows us to use behavioral analytics like dangerous app permissions, malicious code patterns, and even suspicious dev profiles to deem if an app is risky or safe. The danger to your devices doesn't stop here, though. Let's move on to data policy to look into how we can add more protection to your users. From a data policy perspective, we give you the ability to, first off, manage the data connections, and second off, the internet usage for your devices. Like I said before, the top use cases can be broken up into acceptable use and content filtering, where we have over 40 content categories that are made up of millions of apps and domains on the internet. Most customers choose to replicate what they have in their corporate office and choose to block content categories like adult, illegal, hatred, or extreme. I'll be showing this in my demo environment where I block the whole gambling category and try to access a gambling site. The second use case that I spoke of is the ability to prevent bill shock on mobile. So not only can you access or block certain apps and sites, we can also provide immediate ROI from a bill shock perspective. With data policy, we give you the ability to block access to high bandwidth sites like Netflix and YouTube, and we give you the ability to block these on domestic, roaming, or Wi-Fi. So an example might be the ability to allow on domestic and roaming, but allow on Wi-Fi, but block for domestic and roaming to be able to prevent that bill shock. The best part of these use cases that I just mentioned is that within our radar or our admin portal, we give you the insight into all of this. With these controls, you can then enable policies to certain users, groups, or to everyone in your organization. Now that I've highlighted both the general internet protection we provide with threat defense and data policy, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into that business app traffic with private access. This third and final capability within Jamf Trust is all about secure access to business applications. So we use zero trust security principles, and what that means is we make sure the right people are accessing these apps, and we make sure that the devices are safe and secure both before and while we're giving them access to these applications. Some of the main benefits that we see are the end user experience is seamless, and all that's required from your end user is to put in their identity provider credentials upon deployment. The second benefit we see is from an admin perspective, in that the solution is fully scalable and flexible. We're considered a cloud STP, so you as the admin don't need to adjust any ACLs, you don't need to maintain any infrastructure or deal with any certificates, as the authentication is being done by the identity provider. All that's required from you as an admin is to create these access policies and decide which users or which groups of users should be accessing these applications. Last but not least, this is a remote work or remote friendly solution. So it doesn't matter where you're at in the world. If you're going from your favorite coffee shop or you're going from an Uber to the airport, we've built this in a way that it doesn't have an impact on the connection to your business apps, as your users will connect to that nearest edge without them having to know or do anything. Now that I've touched on each of the three pillars within private access, I want to talk about what some of our customers come to us when they talk about these complexity in their network stack, and how oftentimes they have three separate solutions within the network stack. So for instance, they might have one solution for secure access, one solution for device and data security, and a third for data policy. That might cause some complexity both from an end user and an admin perspective, where you need to require different proxy exceptions or have different ways to authenticate. Well, the benefit of what I just showed in the prior slides is that with Jamf Trust, we can provide all three of these capabilities within one client, whether that be on iOS, Android, macOS, or Windows. It can capture all your per app traffic, and it can act as a dynamic split tunnel and send any information it needs to the general internet as well. Now I'm going to be taking us through a demo, and please feel free to follow along in this interactive lab session or follow along in the actual environment, and you can look at the lab afterwards. First off, I'm going to be taking us through the different aspects of Radar and how we can act as an admin from a threat defense, data policy, and private access perspective. Starting at the actual dashboard, I'm going to be taking us through the actual access policies as it relates to the threat defense. So from a threat defense perspective, we have the ability to decide which different groups you want to give policies, whether that be to a baseline policy to everyone or to a specific group of users, maybe the contractor's BYO or RSA group. And as you see here, this gives us the ability to come in and actually decide which types of threats are most important to my environment. Maybe there's some of the more network related threats like phishing, data leaks, malicious network traffic, or maybe there's some of the more endpoint related threats like malicious applications, device admin app installed. This is a fully customizable portal where you can come in and actually decide these, or you can use our apply smart policy to use our security and more or less our vetted one from a lot of our customers. Next up, I'm going to be taking us through, as you see here, our data policy admin perspective. Similar to the last section, we have the ability to assign these at a baseline policy or to a specific groups of users. This might make sense if you wanted to maybe have a more stringent policies for your contractors and maybe have a less stringent for your execs or some of your higher ups. As you see there, from a define your block policy perspective, we can provide the block high risk, the optimized data usage, or the block high bandwidth for more of a vetted security guideline. Or you can choose from any of the 40 plus content categories that you have here and either block that whole category or block a specific traffic interface with domestic, roaming, and Wi-Fi. So scrolling along, you'll see here, I have adult blocked, I have illegal blocked, gambling, and some of the other use cases when it comes from acceptable use. As you see in the third column there, if I wanted to go ahead and allow on Wi-Fi but block on domestic and roaming, it's fully customizable per different content categories. So I encourage you to come in here and actually mess around with this, as you can provide different use cases within the content category use cases. Like I said, we have over 40 plus content categories, which makes up millions of domains. But if you had any custom rules like you see here with block.com, you can simply come in here, add that domain, or import it over via CSV, and you'll be able to block those specific domains from your block policy. Last but not least, from an access policy perspective, again, going back to the pillars, this is all about private access. We give you the ability to create different app policies to your secure business apps. So, from a new app policy, it breaks it up from SaaS versus enterprise apps. So, some of those SaaS apps might be your Salesforce, your Zoom, your Office 365. And as you see on the right hand side for the enterprise app traffic, this is all about connecting to your business app on premise, in a data center, or in a private cloud. I'm going to be taking us through the actual access policy for a SaaS app. As you see here, we have several different predefined templates for apps like Adobe, Atlassian, and BlueJeans. You can come in here and actually just choose from any of these predefined templates. And what's really nice is that we've already added those corporate domains for those applications. So as you see from the first category, from a general perspective, you have the ability to come and actually categorize that app as travel, as technology. It's more or less when it comes down to admin reportive, we give you that ability to group sets of apps. From a traffic matching perspective, like I said, we built out these predefined SaaS templates, but if you had enterprise apps or other custom SaaS apps that you'd like to add, you can simply come in here and add that domain or use a wildcard for a set of domains. It's also important to note that maybe for your enterprise apps, we do support that direct IP or direct subnet if these apps don't have any hostname allocated. One of the main use cases that we see with this users and groups page is the ability to only allow access to the least privileged users, right? So for BYO and RSA group, I want to give access for this Atlassian app. That's what we can do within this solution. Secondly, you'll see the device risk-based access control. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on. And if you go back to if you remember back to the slides, this is all about being able to provide access to these business apps if that device is safe and secure. So I'm going to turn this malware up. I'm going to turn this device app installed up to high. So the use case would be if my user had any of these threats that met that high threshold, well, we're going to make sure the user remediates and block that user from accessing in real time. Closing out on the routing section, we give you the ability to choose from our shared IPs, or you can create a direct IP to any private app or enterprise app or on-prem app as well. It's as simple as that. You'll come in here and save in the create that app. And then once your user goes to try and download that Jamf Trust, and once they initiate with that identity provider, they would be given their Atlassian traffic would be sent, the corporate Atlassian, by way of our Zero Trust Network access. I'm gonna really quickly go through an enterprise app. As you see here, AWS app123.com. This is if I had a specific domain that I wanted to attach. If I also had a company subdomains, maybe I had 50 apps that had company.com. This gives us the ability to catch all of those. And last but not least, as I mentioned prior, we do have the ability to come in here from a direct IP or a direct subnet perspective and give access to this whole environment in your AWS or GCP. Very, very customizable from an admin perspective. So you can give your dev team access, you can give your contractors, whichever user access here. For the sake of this demo, I'm going to give the contractors access and not the BYO and RSA group. And I'm going to turn this device risk-based access for if a device reaches a medium threat, not just that high threat. Last but not least, I'm going to choose the NICS RSA gateway as this is my private IP, my private gateway to get into AWS. And you'll see here, my users would start sending their traffic by way of that access policy because I created that group. Now that I touched on some of the some of the admin perspective from a radar point of view, I want to talk about the end user experience. I'm going to be going through a phishing attack block, a gambling site block. I'm going to be showing you what we mean by least privilege access. First off, starting on our Miriam Analytics screen, I went ahead and I pulled up my test phone as well. We give you the ability to come in here and see these 0-day or these unknown phishing attacks. I filmed this on June 22nd, 2022. So you can see that at that time, this iCloud link and this support apple.find.icloud link were two 0-day or unknown phishing attacks that were out there on the internet. From an end user perspective, you see on the right-hand side, my user went in to try to access that URL and they were presented with this block page. I'm going to also show that from a support.apple perspective. And on the left-hand side, you can see why we've deemed that this is a phishing attack because it has suspicious subdomains, because it has a suspicious Puni code, etc. So that's from a phishing perspective. Now flipping gears a little bit and showing you from a gambling block or a data policy block, I'm going to go ahead and just show everyone what I mean by that. First off, again, I come in here, I'm going to choose the whole gambling category. I'm going to choose a block for lotteries, online gambling, and other gambling, and I try to access gambling.com. I get a very similar site block site, but it shows that the categorization is online gambling and not phishing. Last but not least, I wanted to show what this looks like from an end user perspective. If I'm an end user, I can get educated within our Jamf Trust client. I can come in here and see the phishing sites I access. I can see the gambling site, and I can see what my user has done for me from a policy perspective. So that is from a threat defense and data policy perspective. Last but not least, I did want to show that least privilege access from a private access perspective. So again, remembering the secure access to business apps, you'll see here I have my device underneath the contractors group. If I go back to the access policy, I have different apps for contractors, I have different apps for BYO and RSA group, and I have a couple apps for everyone. This my IP on a map is only for the RSA group, so my contractor's device is not included in this specific group. If I try to go to this map.wandera.com URL or this specific app, you'll see that I get a forbidden sign. So I can't access it because of that least privilege access control. My users strictly just don't have access to this app, and the data packet will be lost before they can even connect to it. Next up, I wanted to show you an app in which my contractor's device does have access to it, right? So everyone, whether that be RSA group, BYO contractors, has access to this IP Cuttaford app. You'll see I come in here and I put in that specific domain for this app, this ip.cuttaford.com, and it gives me, it's a very simple app, but it just spits out the IP in which my device is coming from. So it gives me that 108 IP showing, yes, everyone has access to this app. It is not forbidden. Now that I've gone through the admin policies, I've gone through the end user experience, I want to close out from a radar reporting perspective. I want to show everyone threat defense, data policy, and private access and how we can integrate with your SIM or with your SOAR. So starting from a threat defense perspective, you'll see here on the screen, we can actually break up our categories. If I go into this here, if I go into reports and I go into security, and threat view, we break it up by both threat and device view. So I can come in here, I have 3 high threats, 13 medium, 26 low. We break that down by high, medium, and low. And you can see that some of those secured threats, so those phishing websites, those cryptojacking, the third-party app store, the web data leaks that my users are accessing. You can come in here and actually see Office 365. You can see one of those Medium Analytics 0-day requests. So I can come in here and actually see what those specific policies mean as it relates to phishing, as it relates to data leaks. I can educate myself as an admin so I can say, okay, what is phishing? How do I want to actually change this threat security policy? As you see from this screen, I can do this from this page, or maybe I want to go ahead and ignore this specific threat. You can do that within this part as well. So I showed from a threat view perspective, we have the same kind of idea from a device view perspective. So maybe I want to look at why Brandon, Danny, and Abigail and all these users are deemed as high or medium risk. I can come in here and look at the vulnerable apps they've installed. This Granny is a zombie Trojan malware and get more info there. One of the pages that I really like is this App Insights because it gives us the whole app inventory of your users. So if I go in here and actually were to click into one of these risky applications, again, this is a demo portal, so take it for what it's worth. But this WhatsApp app, I can come in here and see why we've deemed this as a medium threat. As you see here, it's because that this specific app was deemed as a 50% risk because it has app permissions risk, because it has accessibility risk, and because of those behavioral analytics that I mentioned all the way back in our slideshow. So that's our threat defense. Now switching gears a little bit into the data policy reporting perspective, I like to show overall usage. We can see the total web usage. We can see the estimated data savings based on those gambling blocks, based on some of those high bandwidth blocks. Again, this is a demo portal, but I can come in here and see the overall data used. I could see the overall block transactions, what devices, which users are accessing the most content here. So maybe I want to either block Instagram altogether, or maybe for some of those high bandwidth sites like Netflix, I want to only allow on Wi-Fi so I can provide that ROI. We give you that full sites and apps breakdown. You can come here and search by category. As you see here, I'm going to show you really briefly the online gambling category, as this should show one of the blocks from my previous demo. But hopefully the point is clear that you can come in here and basically see all the network traffic for any of these general internet requests. As you see here, we have the gambling, the block transactions, and I'm just going to show that. So you as an admin can come in here, understand when these users were blocked, why they were being blocked on which device, and gain more intel from your users there. We also have the categorical view, so you could see the top, gambling, You can come in here and see the data share, the popularity of these social apps or of these gambling apps, so you can get a sense as to the overall, more of a hierarchical view, less so from a specific sites and apps. Last but not least, the ability to prevent that bill shock. We can come in here and actually put a block, or both a soft or a hard block on some of, maybe, maybe they reach 10 gigs or 15 gigs of their overall usage. I can put a block on that and have them only access a specific number of sites once they reach that threshold. Last but not least, switching over to that business app traffic, I wanted to focus on private access and the vast reporting we have with this. You'll see here the application breakdown from a technology, from a productivity perspective. You can see we have tools, Tableau, Salesforce. You can see on the right-hand side those allowed requests as well as those denied requests. For maybe the risk being too high, we went ahead and blocked. We break it down by overall user activity from a daily connection perspective. You can come in here and see Ismail and Braden and all these different users and on what device they're using. And to close it all out, my favorite view is this demo data portion because it gives us the viewpoint on Aaron, on Abigail, on all these different users. It tells us how they're actually accessing these business apps. Is it through a shared data center like EU West, EU East, or is it direct to AWS or direct to your on-prem environment? Last but not least, you'll see the denied category at the bottom. Again, this is if their device reached a threshold in which they shouldn't have access to that app, we'll go ahead and block that and communicate through the app. So as you can see here, you can break this down by different categories. We could see the access time range. So it would make sense that most of these apps are being accessed during the work week and not on the weekend, but this gives a full view into what's really going on with your environment. Well, that sums up the overall Jamf Trust lab. So please feel free to use the interactive lab that we have here in the coming weeks. And I really want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen in, and we'll see you next year. Thank you.